So today, Wednesday 11th, we finalized the Secretary General's Forum, which is part of the consultative dialogue framework of the East African community. The Secretary General's Forum is the place where different interests, civil society, private sector, and so on, gather to agree on policy proposals that then can be forwarded to what I call the policy making pipeline of the East African community. And one of the things that I kept insisting on is the fact that we need to embrace more community building, more social cohesion within the region. A lot of our economists, a lot of our people in government are trained in neoliberal economics, the so-called Chicago School, and they have not even woken up to the realization that even those who perpetuated neoliberal economics, if you remember the Thatcher years, the Reagan years, when liberalization, deregulation became the main buzzwords in economics. Many of our economists in Africa do not even realize that the United States of America, for example, long ago started moving away from the neoliberal Washington consensus. And they started worrying about jobs at home. We know the theories. We know the from Smith, Ricardo, new theories of international trade, American multinational corporations chasing after cheap labor and situations where there's no strict environmental guidelines and so on and so forth. And that created contradictions within the American society and by extension within the developed, so-called developed nations. And they have been moving away from the harsh realities and contradictions created by the Washington neoliberal consensus. Through the Trump years, through the Biden years, there are certain legislation, pieces of law that have been passed in the United States of America, which basically suggest that this unhindered international era of international trade is basically coming to an end or has come to an end. If you listened to the rhetoric of Donald Trump with MAGA, Make America Great Again, of course, Trump did impose a lot of sanctions against China. Part of the thinking within the American policy establishment, of course, is China is the number one threat. And so there's always been this movement to try and curtail the continued growth of China. And so they start using words like dumping, that China is actually dumping, which basically such words go against the Washington consensus, unmitigated liberalization of trade, basically going back to the Keynes years and the controversies around that. So it's quite interesting, and sometimes I wonder whether African scholars, African economists, African leaders ever sit down and reflect on where the world is going. We will be left holding empty cans. These theories have been so immersed in our heads that we fail to think for ourselves. And one of my criticisms against the regional integration project in Africa is that it is cast on a neoliberal framework. Um, and therefore, we are chasing ghosts in this region. And that was, those are the key points that I thought I was making during the Secretary General's forum. Of course, there's a lot of ignorance, not just about where the world is going, but also specifically even about the regional integration project itself. And some of the key leaders you can see don't really know what this is all about. So I am hoping that there can be more, better grounded conversations around these issues. And so that African states do not find themselves one day um, not knowing how to abandon frameworks that have been abandoned by those who promulgated them in the first place.